The glass doors of Mercy General's new pediatric wing had barely swung open when Marcus stepped directly into my path. He planted one hand on the brass dedication plaque and looked at me with the same expression he'd worn for 8 years whenever he needed me to disappear quietly. "You're not supposed to be here," Marcus said. Not loudly, he'd always been careful with volume, but with enough certainty that the board members walking behind him slowed their steps. I adjusted the strap of my leather bag, the same one I'd carried through every shift since nursing school, and took a slow breath. The migraine that had been building since dawn pulsed behind my left eye. Then I touched my hospital badge, the silver one engraved with Chief Nursing Officer, Mercy General, hanging from a lanyard I never removed, and I smiled. "Actually, Marcus," I said quietly, "this wing doesn't open without me." He laughed. Not nervous, confident, the way he always laughed when he thought I'd misunderstood something financial. "Ava, you've always had quite an imagination." Dr. James Whitmore, the board chair, stopped beside me. He didn't smile. He simply looked at Marcus and said, "Mr. Vasquez, you should read the plaque more carefully." Marcus turned. The brass plate gleamed under the lobby lights. In raised letters it read, "The Dr. Margaret Whitmore. Pediatric Wing established. Through the endowment of Ava Whitmore, Vasquez, Chief Administrator." Marcus went completely still. Then he spoke to me, not to the board, not to anyone else. "What did you do?" I didn't answer right away. I'd learned over the past 8 months that silence does more damage than shouting ever could. Instead, I reached into my bag, pulled out a slim manila envelope, and handed it to Dr. Whitmore. "These are the authorization documents," I said. "Every board vote Marcus tried to manipulate. Every contract he signed using my credentials without disclosure. Every dollar of the medical supply company he incorporated in my name." Dr. Whitmore took the envelope. Marcus's face went pale, not slowly but all at once, like a curtain falling. "You didn't just donate money," Marcus said, his voice dropping. "You built a case." "I built a hospital," I corrected. "You just tried to sell it back to me without knowing I already owned the keys." For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Then Marcus recovered, because Marcus always recovered. "This is a misunderstanding. Ava's emotional. She's pregnant." "I'm not pregnant anymore, Marcus," I interrupted. The words came out steady, almost clinical, the way I'd delivered bad news in hospital rooms for 15 years. "You threw me out at 26 weeks. I delivered at 31, alone, in a public ward, because you canceled my insurance the week after you changed the locks." The lobby went silent. Not respectful silence, the kind of silence that happens when a room realizes it has witnessed something it should never have ignored. Marcus looked at Dr. Whitmore. "She's confused." "The stress?" "Mr. Vasquez," Dr. Whitmore said, "the board received your resignation an hour ago. We also received the forensic accounting report. You are not confused. You are exposed." Marcus turned back to me. His hands were shaking now, the first physical tell I'd seen in 8 years. "You can't do this," he said. "I didn't do this," I said. "You did. I just made sure there was someone left to document it." That was the moment the doors behind us opened again, and Dr. Sarah Kim walked in with Marcus's business partner and 2 attorneys from the state medical board. She walked straight to me, not to Marcus, and she said 3 words that ended everything. He never knew, did he? And for the first time in 8 years, Marcus Vasquez had nothing to say. Welcome back to Revenge Camera Stories, where the truth develops in real time and the people who tried to erase you learn exactly what they excluded. If you've ever been told you were a burden instead of a builder, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from right now. I want to know how far stories like this travel. But let me back up 8 months before that lobby, before the plaque, before the envelope, before the silence that finally spoke for me. I need to tell you who I was the morning Marcus decided I was disposable, because that's the version of me he never bothered to understand. We met in the cafeteria of Mercy General on a Tuesday in October, 10 years before the wing, 10 years before the pregnancy, 10 years before the day he decided my life was an obstacle to his ambition. I was 24, working the night shift in pediatrics, eating cold pasta at 4 in the morning, because that was the only time the cafeteria was quiet enough to think. Marcus was standing at the coffee machine in an expensive suit that didn't match the time, holding a folder with his consulting firm printed on the cover. He noticed my badge first. Not my face, my badge. Chief nursing officer? He asked. Not flirting, just assessing. At 24? I started young, I said. Ambitious, he said. He asked about the hospital. Not small talk, the kind of questions people ask when they're measuring something. Patient outcomes, staffing ratios, capital budgets. By the time my shift ended at 7, he'd finished 3 cups of coffee and asked me to dinner. We married 18 months later in a ceremony small enough to feel honest. My parents, Dr. Margaret Whitmore, a pediatric surgeon, and Thomas Whitmore, a hospital administrator, gave me the same wedding gift they gave every important decision in my life. They asked what I needed, then they listened. Marcus was charming then. Not in the shallow way people sometimes mistake for kindness, but in the focused way of someone who knows exactly what he wants and believes he's entitled to it. He wanted to build something. A medical consulting firm that would bridge hospitals and technology, reduce administrative waste, improve patient outcomes. I believed him. Not blindly. I'd worked in healthcare long enough to know the difference between vision and vanity. But Marcus had the papers, the degrees, the connections from his previous firm. And he had something else, too. He made me feel like the work I did, administering budgets, managing staff, negotiating supply contracts, mattered as much as any surgery performed in that building. We bought a house near the hospital. Not extravagant. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with windows that caught morning light, a small garden where I planted tomatoes, that never quite survived the Indiana winters. Marcus worked from our dining table. I continued as chief nursing officer. We talked about children. Eventually, when the firm stabilized, when I wasn't needed for every emergency meeting, I got pregnant 3 years into the marriage. The first trimester was easy. The second was manageable. By the third, Marcus had started changing, not dramatically, but in the small, measurable ways that people change when they believe they've already won something. He stopped asking about patient outcomes, started asking about my schedule, suggested I take maternity leave early, suggested I consider stepping back permanently. When I refused, politely, professionally, with the same patience I used with difficult families, he stopped arguing. He simply started planning without me. I noticed the folder 2 months before he threw me out. Not hidden, placed on the dining table. Open, with documents I recognized. Incorporation papers for Vasquez Medical Consulting LLC. Investment proposals. And something else buried on page 4. A proposal to partner exclusively with Mercy General for medical supply contracts. That was when I understood what I'd missed. Marcus hadn't been building a firm alongside my career. He'd been using my access to build a pipeline. I didn't confront him immediately. I'd learned in 15 years of hospital administration that people reveal themselves faster when they believe you're not watching. So I watched. I copied. I saved every email, every proposal, every signature he asked me to provide. Just a formality, Ava. The board requires spousal acknowledgement for large vendor contracts. I signed nothing new. I kept the old documents. I called my attorney, Rachel Kim, who'd served on our board for years. Not because I was planning revenge, but because I needed someone who understood both law and medicine, someone who had a reason to help me besides friendship. And Rachel did have a reason. Marcus's proposed contract with Mercy General included a device, a pediatric monitoring system with testing, reports that didn't match the clinical data Rachel had reviewed. Marcus was trying to rush approval through the board, using my administrative clearance as cover. Rachel met me at a coffee shop near Meridian Street, the same street where Marcus now drove every morning to his office. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she stirred her coffee once. "What do you want?" she asked. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "What will you do?" Just, "What do you want?" "I want him to stop pretending I never existed," I said. Rachel nodded. Then she asked a question that changed everything. "Did you sign this year's proxy authorization?" I blinked. The annual hospital board proxy, the document that allowed Marcus, as my spouse with shared financial interests, to vote on vendor contracts involving our family assets. "No," I said. "You haven't. I forgot." Rachel smiled for the first time. "No, you remembered exactly when you needed to." She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a corporate binder, the same kind I used in board meetings, with labeled sections and color-coded tabs. "Turn to page 32, she said. I opened it. The page showed a chart, equity distribution, voting rights, Class A preferred shares, my parents' original investment in Mercy General, structured through my inheritance, carried specific provisions. 5 votes per share, non-transferable without my written consent, protected by the original endowment agreement, drafted by Rachel herself when she was a young attorney. You own 38% of the voting equity, Rachel said quietly. Not through Marcus, through your parents, through the endowment that built this hospital's pediatric research program. So Marcus doesn't control your vote. For the first time in years, he doesn't control anything you haven't given him. That was the discovery. Not dramatic. Not hidden in a vault, but present. Documented, protected by the same legal structures my parents had insisted on because they understood something Marcus never learned. Institutions survive individuals, but only if someone remembers to protect them. Over the following weeks, Marcus accelerated. He pushed for board approval of his contract. He introduced me at events as my wife. Ava, she's been focusing on family lately, as if my absence from work was a choice rather than a removal he was trying to engineer. Then he threw me out. Not physically violent. Marcus was never physical. Just efficient. He changed the locks while I was at a prenatal appointment. He left my belongings in boxes labeled, "Donate, Ava's old things." He canceled my health insurance the following Monday, citing policy adjustments for non-employed spouses. I was 6 months pregnant, living temporarily with Rachel in her small apartment near downtown, working nights at a different clinic to maintain my nursing license, and quietly building something Marcus never imagined. A complete record of his fraud, protected by my legal authority as a board member and my personal authority as the primary beneficiary of the pediatric wing endowment. The pregnancy was complicated. Not life-threatening, but requiring bed rest, frequent monitoring, specialized care. Marcus never called. His mother, Lorraine, sent a single message through an attorney. Marcus believes it's best for everyone if you don't attempt to return to the marital residence. I didn't attempt. I prepared. The hospital wing, formerly the Dr. Margaret Whitmore Pediatric Wing, named after my mother, was scheduled for dedication on the anniversary of her retirement. Marcus had planned to attend, not because the wing was his achievement, but because he intended to announce Vasquez Medical Consulting as the exclusive technology partner for the new facility. He never read the plaque carefully. Men like Marcus rarely read anything they don't expect to control. The morning of the ceremony, I arrived early. I wore my hospital badge, the silver one, the one that opened every restricted area in the building, including the boardroom. I carried my files not in a briefcase, but in my leather bag, the same one from nursing school, worn at the edges, reliable. Marcus arrived in his tailored navy suit, confident, shaking hands with board members, introducing himself to donors, unaware that every contract he mentioned was already under independent review triggered by my vote. My authority, my refusal to sign away control. The lobby filled with people, doctors, nurses, donors, families whose children had been treated in the wing. Marcus stood near the plaque, talking about vision, about partnership, about the future of pediatric care, words he'd borrowed from the proposal he'd tried to force, through the board. Then he saw me. Not first, he saw my badge, the silver one, the one that read Chief Nursing Officer, Mercy General, the one he thought I'd surrendered when he threw me out. Then he saw the envelope I handed to Dr. Whitmore. Then he saw his business partner being escorted out by 2 attorneys. Then he read the plaque. Dr. Margaret Whitmore Pediatric Wing, established. Through the endowment of Ava Whitmore, Vasquez, Chief Administrator. That was when he spoke to me. That was when the silence began. That was when everything ended, and everything I had actually built finally began. But before that lobby, before the envelope, before the silence, I need to tell you what happened the night Marcus threw me out, because that's where the real work started. The real work wasn't revenge, it was survival. And survival, as I learned, requires more patience than anger ever could. The locks changed on a Tuesday. I came home from my prenatal appointment, 26 weeks. Healthy heartbeat, nothing unusual, to find my key wouldn't turn. The door wasn't just locked. The mechanism was different, newer, installed by someone who knew exactly how long it takes to change a lock. There was no note on the door, no text message, just silence, and the sound of furniture being moved inside. Marcus directing movers, probably, arranging things the way he preferred. I called him. He didn't answer. I called Rachel. She answered on the first ring. "Come to my apartment," she said. "Now, don't go back to the house." "Why?" Because Marcus filed a motion with the court last Thursday, Rachel said. Not divorce, separation of assets. He claims you're emotionally unstable. He claims the pregnancy is complicated by stress you caused. He's trying to establish a record that justifies removing you from shared property. How did you know? Because I sit on the board, Ava, and Marcus submitted a letter through his attorney requesting temporary administrative leave for you due to medical concerns. The board received it. I stopped it. That was the moment I understood. Marcus wasn't just leaving me. He was trying to erase me professionally, legally, permanently, using the pregnancy as evidence that I was unfit. I went to Rachel's apartment. I didn't cry, not then. I was too busy being precise. I listed everything I knew. The incorporation papers, the contract proposals, the proxy authorization I'd never signed, the medical records Marcus had accessed without consent using my insurance credentials. Rachel listened. She made coffee. She asked questions in the order a lawyer asks them. Not emotional. Not rushed, just methodical. How long have you suspected the contract was fraudulent? Since I saw the testing reports. Can you prove it? I have copies. Can you prove he used your credentials? I have the authorization logs. Can you prove you're capable of making medical and administrative decisions for yourself? I looked at her. I'm 26 weeks pregnant, I said. I'm a licensed nurse administrator with 15 years of experience. I'm sitting in your apartment because my husband changed the locks. I think that answers your question. Rachel nodded. Then we have everything we need. Not for revenge, for protection. For documentation. For the simple, undeniable record of what had actually happened. Preserved in a form no one could dispute. Over the following months, I worked when I could. Modified shifts. Remote administrative tasks. Board meetings conducted via secure video conference when bed rest required it. The pregnancy became complicated. Placenta previa, requiring hospitalization at 31 weeks, delivery at 32 by emergency cesarean. Marcus never came to the hospital. His mother, Lorraine, sent flowers with a card that said, "Wishing you well." No return address. No acknowledgement that I had delivered a child, our child, without him present. The baby, Eleanor, survived. Healthy, small, but breathing on her own by the second day. I named her Margaret after my mother, without asking Marcus, without consulting him, because by then I understood something I should have understood years earlier. His opinion was not required for any decision that affected my life, my child, or my work. While I was recovering, Rachel continued the investigation. Marcus's contract proposal had advanced through preliminary board review, without my vote, without the full disclosure required. The testing reports for the pediatric monitoring device had been altered, clinical failure rates lowered from 17% to 2%, using data copied from an unrelated study conducted in a different country. Rachel found the original reports. She found the financial records showing Marcus had incorporated Vasquez Medical, consulting specifically to receive payments from the hospital contract. Payments that would have been routed through shared marital assets if approved. She found the proxy authorization Marcus had tried to use, my expired signature from the previous year, presented as current consent. Everything was documented. Everything was legal. Everything was ready, not for attack, but for defense. For the moment when Marcus would try to claim ownership over something he had never actually built. That moment came at the dedication ceremony. Marcus arrived expecting to announce a partnership. Instead, he encountered evidence. The envelope contained 3 things: the independent clinical review of his device, the financial audit of his consulting firm, and the board resolution, passed by vote, including my authorization, removing him from any vendor relationship with Mercy General. Dr. Whitmore didn't announce these things dramatically. He simply handed Marcus the documents. He asked Marcus to confirm whether he recognized the signatures. He asked whether Marcus had disclosed the altered testing reports to the board. He asked whether Marcus understood that using a spouse's expired proxy authorization constituted fraud under Indiana medical administration law. Marcus couldn't answer. Not because he was guilty, though he was, but because he had spent so long believing in his own invincibility that the possibility of being wrong had never occurred to him. That was when he turned to me. That was when he said, "What did you do?" That was when I answered, not with anger, not with satisfaction, but with the same calm I'd used in every difficult delivery, Every emergency decision, every moment when a life depended on someone remaining steady. I built a record, I said, not of revenge, of reality. The reality is that you tried to use my pregnancy to remove me. The reality is that you tried to use my work to enrich yourself. The reality is that you never read the documents that protected me because you never believed I was capable of protecting anything. Marcus looked at the envelope, at the board, at the plaque with my name, at my badge, the silver one, the one that identified me not as his wife, but as the administrator who had built the wing he was trying to claim. You don't understand, he said, his voice breaking slightly. This company, this hospital, this is everything I worked for.